Conversations with Gary, a weekly podcast featuring the preaching and teaching ministry of Gary E. Wright. The music is provided by Doug Noonan and Renewal Band and is used with permission.
My faith is in it, Lord.
I read a story last month that really caught my interest. I don't know if you've had this experience as a parent or a grandparent, but I'm guessing there's a lot of people in this room who've had this experience where you go away as husband and wife for a holiday. And in this particular story, the husband and wife, the Martinez family, the husband and wife went away for their anniversary and had things they thought set up at home to take care of the kids. Now, have you had that experience? And then you get the phone call that things are not as you thought you left them. The Martinez family got a phone call, not from who they had put in charge at the house. Their phone call was from the police because their 14-year-old son, who, by the way, whose name was Angel, but he didn't live up to that name for at least at that moment. He had been washing their car, a Road Ranger, not an inexpensive vehicle, by the way, and he got it all washed, but Rob, he didn't have anything to dry it with. So you know what he decided at 14 years old? The best way to dry it was to take it for a drive. He did not have good experience when he was driving, and he wasn't an experienced driver, and he drove too fast, scared the neighbors, and I think scared the police, who stopped him and called his parents while they were on their anniversary trip. Have you ever had that kind of situation? I wish I could say, I don't know what that's like. But I've even been in other countries and got that phone call. And it's not a fun experience, is it? When your children or grandchildren act up and you're just trying to have a relaxing time away. The parents, by the way, reacted in I thought, an unusual way. When they came home, they gave everything in his bedroom away, including his bed. In fact, there is a picture, if you Google it, of Angel sitting on his bed in the driveway as they gave away everything. And he had to sleep on the floor. That's what got my attention, is the parents' reaction to this. And the media, of course, interviewed Angel and said, what did you think of this? And Angel's reaction was, it seemed pretty fair and justified punishment, which I found, he's sitting on his bed as they're giving it away. I'm not saying this is the correct way for a parent to respond. I'm just saying this is what happened. And we have expressions about things like this. When the cat's away, the mice will play. We have expressions because we've all had that situation when we were supposed to have somebody who was supposed to be accountable to somebody else while we were away. By the way, that happens in the first chapter of Acts as Jesus ascended, and the angel said to the watchers, why are you standing here watching? It's time to get going. Do what Jesus left the 12 or 11 in charge, didn't he? There's a similar experience in the Bible in Moses. Moses is challenged by God to go up on the mountain. He was supposed to have this great mountaintop experience with God, and he did. And then the call came. When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on the Mount Sinai, and he gave him 2 tablets, the Ten Commandments, and they are often called the testimonies, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. I mean, these tablets were actually cut out of stone by God, and with his finger, he wrote the 10 Commandments on them. Precious, precious tablets. Now, most of our pictures show, these big limestone tablets, and I really don't believe that's what they were. I believe they were more like the size of my tablet. That's what scholars say, and that they were probably slate, a rock. And so, there he is. And the call comes from God himself, not the police. God himself says, you need to go back. There's a problem. They're not acting like angels down there. In fact, they have made a god, an idol, out of gold. They coerced and twisted Moses' brother's Aaron's arm, not very hard. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God, the writing of God engraved on the tablets. So when it says that as Moses approached the camp down at the bottom of the hill, he saw the calf and the dancing. His anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. I wonder what the value would be if we just found one little piece of that stone with just one little letter on it. We would go crazy, wouldn't we? No, according to Walter Kaiser, when the English text reads in 32:6 of Exodus that the people rose up to play, it means that the people began to indulge in sexual prostitution. Therefore, compounding of sin was a major problem. Wow. So, we get down to what happened while Pastor Moses, who held them accountable, what happened? What did these people do? We know Angel drove the family car saying he needed to dry it off. What did they do? Well, first of all, they made with their own hands this golden calf idol. And they started worshiping it, and they even went so far as to say, this is the God who delivered us and got us out of Egypt and out of bondage. Now, if we're going to look at what they did and compare it to us, in our day today, we would have to say, I think, would we be in agreement that our culture, not just in North America, but also globally, we're really caught up in a materialistic, sometimes greedy culture. I want to ask you, how many cars do you as a family own? How many cars do you have? Do you just have one? Or do you have more than one? Did you know, and this isn't a sinful thing, but did you know that people who own cars, only one person for every 8 people in the world own one car? That's why when the rest of the world looks at we Americans, they go, man, they are rich. Because some of us have, like myself, have multiple cars sitting out in our driveway. But if we have one, that's more than most in the world. 1 out of 8 owns a car. And that's not wrong. It's just that we are really prone and are tempted to really become involved in materialistic and sometimes greedy behavior. We really are a meistic culture, is what I call it. We even have songs. I mean, I remember getting on the bus when in high school, and Frank Sinatra was singing, "I Did It My Way." You know how some things, they played on the radio at the same time every day, Every day when I'd get on the bus, Frank was singing, "I Did It My Way." And let me tell you, we Americans, that's kind of who we are. We've had a really tough time with this COVID thing and the mask thing. We're like Ford. Ford's a part of us. We usually have a better idea, and we want to do things our way. And I've got to be me. I've got to be me. And we really worship at that me idol. They gave themselves credit by making this idol for freeing themselves from Egypt. Now, I really believe in counseling. I believe in Christian counseling. But we really have gone overboard on the whole self-help movement. Millions and millions and billions of dollars spent trying to say, I can help myself. It's all about what I do. Self-actualization is one of the phrases we invented. And I believe in those things, and yet we take them so far and leave out God. And the moment we leave him out, we've gone off the map, off the grid. Sexual sin. Have you noticed how important sexuality is in our culture today? God's the one who invented sex. He's the one that thought of it. He is the one that thought that it should be pleasurable within the bonds of marriage. And yet, we have gone so far as we feel like we have to have the exact label of our sexuality. And we often want to be known by that label, whatever it is. It was God's idea. But if you add the meistic, I gotta be me, I have to have it my way culture. Wow. That's one of our idols, I think. Is it not? And the rebellion against any kind of authority other than our own idea. You see what that really amounts to, the materialism, the sexuality, and the rebellion against authority. It's the big three that has destroyed any culture from existing very long in the history of the world. Money, sex, power. There we are. That's what was going on in Israel. You decide whether that's going on in our culture, in our world. I'm reminded of another prophet who put it this way. Ezekiel said that God said, I look for someone to stand in my presence and in the gap so that the land would not be destroyed. But I found no one. I look for someone to stand in my presence and in the gap. What's it mean, stand in the gap? I've got a picture of the gap. In that day, in Ezekiel's day, a city was protected by protective walls. Now, throughout the world, almost all houses have a protective wall. That's not true here in America because we have police force and that sort of thing. But throughout the rest of the world, I can tell you, everything is surrounded by a security wall. Businesses, houses. And you got to make sure that security, often throughout the world, they put some kind of sharp objects up on the security wall. They build glass or barbed wire or something sharp to protect the house. And if there is a broken place in the wall where somebody can get through, that's a gap. And the picture, you see it. And so that's what God was saying when he spoke through Ezekiel and said, I look for someone to stand in the gap in my presence so that the land would be destroyed. But Ezekiel said, at that time in his day, I found no one. I believe God today is looking for people who will stand in his presence and stand in the gap. What is a gap person? I believe it built into English is a nice little acrostic. It is a God-appointed person. It is somebody that God trusts to stand in the gap. And I believe that they can stand when they're appointed by God. I believe they can stand in the gap and have godly superpowers, as Jesus did, to protect the land. First of all, to protect our families. Every family here needs a gap person. Every family here needs somebody standing in the gap for your family. Amen? Somebody has to take the initiative. Every church needs a group of people standing in the gap for the church. Marion, Indiana needs people standing in the gap for this city, for this county. We Hoosiers need to be standing in the gap for our state. We need to be standing in the gap for our nation. And it's not just our nation that's in trouble. Let me tell you, it's the whole globe. Our world needs, like it's never needed before, someone who would stand in the gap with godly superpowers enclosed so that the land would not be destroyed. In the Exodus, God found someone who would stand in the gap. And let's look at what that looks like. Moses. It says that Moses was a gap person. The next day, Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin." Now here's where the gap starts. "But now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." Now, I think he knew there's no way he could be the atonement. What he meant was, maybe I can be a tool, which is what a gap person is. That's what a God-appointed person is. A tool of God to stand in the gap for our community, for our families. He said, we messed up big time. And then during that day, God wasn't talking to anybody else but him. Read the book. Watch the movie. God wasn't talking to anybody else but Moses. So Moses went up to the mountain for the last time. Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They've made themselves gods of gold, but now please forgive their sin. Here's the tool that God will use. But if not, then blot me out of the book you've written. What do you think of that, Rob? That's pretty strong stuff. A God-appointed person. This is the kind of person that can be a gap agent. Wow. Forgive them, and Lord, I'm willing to give my life for eternity. Take me off the books. But Lord, whatever you do, don't destroy these people. I want to get to the characteristics that made him a gap person. First of all, he was a person of prayer. You remember how he used to put his tent outside of the camp, during their camping period, like 40 years or whatever it was, and it says that God would come and they would see the pillar of fire that would come, and Moses, it said, would be in the tent, he and Joshua, and God would speak with Moses face to face as he speaks with a friend. Hear that language? Hear that? God and Moses were friends. I don't want to be known for any other label of any kind other than that Gary Wright. I think he and God are friends. And I'm not talking about the denomination of Friends, although that's my heritage. That is where we got our name. They said we were friends of God. And I want to ask right here, 2020, are we friends of God, or are we just wearing the label, the sign? I'm not saying we're not. I'm asking you. Are we really friends of God? Do we have that kind of relationship with him? He was a man of prayer. That's what a gap person is. They live in the presence of God. And secondly, he was an absolute God chaser. He chased God. Now, most of us here have had the experience of God chasing us because we're his lost kids who chose, to go our own way and be sinful. And he chased us to the point where we gave our life back to him and act like, boy, we did a big thing for you, God. But Moses, he chased God. He really did. Look, he said to God as he was getting ready to go up on the mountain, he says, God, be sure you go with us. And he'd actually said, if you don't go, let's call off this trip. That's Eugene Peterson's actual translation of it in the Message. If you're not going to go with us into the promised land, call off this trip now. I don't want to go without you. How many of us have said, God, I really do not want to live another day without you? I don't know where you're at, folks, but that's where this guy's at. I don't want to breathe a breath. I don't want to live a day. I don't want to sleep through the night unless we're going together, Jesus and me. I've tried the other way. It didn't turn out well for me. Amen. Moses says, hey, I not only want to make sure you're going with us, I want to experience your glory. Well, who even knows what that means? I don't think he knew what it meant. It was a good request. God liked it. He realized, here is a man who's chasing me. He wants to be even closer to me than he's ever been. And God said, you can't take it. If you see my face, it'll kill you. But I tell you what, when I pass by you on the mountain and give you that second set of the 10 Commandments, when I pass by, I'm going to hide you over here, and I'm going to put my hand over you and protect you from the awesome power of my glory so that you'll live. But after I pass by, you can see the trail that I leave. Have you ever seen the trail that God leaves? We've seen other kinds of trails. Dwight saw the trail of the tornado that went through his community and destroyed our little church facility. Tornadoes leave an awful trail. God leaves an awful trail too, but it's a powerful, wonderful trail he leaves. And when he passed by, Moses saw, and the moment God passed by, it says Moses fell to the ground and worshiped, saying, please, Master, if you see anything good in me, please, Master, travel with us. In other words, call off the trip if you're not going with us we're a hard-headed people. Forgive our iniquity, sin. And then these words, this so struck me as I read them. He said, God, own us, possess us. 2 requests, own me and possess me. Wow. This is what a God-appointed gap person is. God, own me. And then possess me. We think of demon possession, and we've read, we've seen in the movies what people think that is. But what we really need is people possessed of Jesus, the very Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, to be possessed of him and to go and be that person who stands in the gap for our family, stands in the gap for our city, for our church, for our nation, and for this world. Bethany Shislove created this artwork of someone standing in the gap, but they're kneeling in the gap. A person of prayer, owned and possessed by God. Owned and possessed by God. God said, Moses, get up in the morning. And he says, I need you to go back up the mountain, and I'll give you those, and you'll also see me up there. And it says Moses got up early the next morning and headed up the mountain for the last time. He needs people to stand in the gap for your family, this congregation, this city, this state, this nation, this world.